Welcome to the Truthful Fake podcast. If you find this analysis stimulating, please share and click on the like button. Trump's geopolitical strategy can be hard to grasp. By alienating longtime allies in Europe, he has undermined America's superpower status. His administration has even pushed Europe to become a future peer competitor, free from U.S. influence and likely to make new alliances, potentially with China and conceivably against the United States. Trump's decision to withhold military aid from Ukraine, forcing it to capitulate to Russia, harmed not only American credibility, but it also damaged the long-term prospects of the so-called U.S. military-industrial complex. By casting doubt on the reliability of U.S.-sourced weapons systems that can be remotely disabled or denigrated based on the whims of American administrations. In response, the EU has begun a major shift from buying American weapons, which accounted for 64% of its military equipment purchases in 2024, to strengthening its own defense industry and adopting a buy European policy, potentially turning Europe into a serious rival for American arms manufacturers. Most observers see this drastic shift in U.S. foreign policy as risky and contrary to long-standing national interests. Some political realists, like John Mearsheimer, argue that Russia remains a great power and blame the invasion of Ukraine on earlier U.S. statements about Ukraine eventually joining NATO. Ironically, Mearsheimer also argues that Russia is too weak to threaten Europe, so the United States should court it as an ally against China. Although I respect Mearsheimer, he lacks deep expertise on Russia, and his assumption that Russia will ease its aggressive expansionism as a response to appeasement from the U.S. is mistaken. Russia, as the Soviet Union before it, has long used propaganda, financial and logistical support for splinter factions, sabotage, military threats, and false flag operations against its neighbors and against vulnerable parts of Europe as a whole. No evidence suggests it will abandon these methods anytime soon. In truth, Ukrainian NATO membership was never likely to become a reality in Putin's lifetime. Still, the idea replaced the old Russian propaganda talking point that Ukrainian fascists are oppressing native Russians, because NATO bashing appealed more to the Vance-like isolationists in the US and Europe, as well as some academics, like Mearsheimer. In truth, if Putin truly viewed NATO as an existential threat, he would not have diverted troops from Russia's borders with actual NATO members in order to invade Ukraine, a non-member posing no direct danger to Russia. How, then, do we explain Trump's choice to abandon established U.S. interests and direct U.S. foreign policy to appease Putin, betray Ukraine, and split the U.S. from the EU? Even as the threat from China grows and America desperately needs the support of its allies? I reject the notions advanced by most analysts that Trump is merely ignorant of history, or that he is delusional in believing that he can pull a reverse Nixon and win Russia as an ally against China by sacrificing Ukraine and splitting from Europe. I don't see Trump as a mere useful idiot, nor as a Russian asset. The most logical explanation, despite its potentially disastrous impact on U.S. strategic interests, centers on the Middle East, and more specifically, on Israel. Whether by design or oversight, many analysts miss the signs that Trump's highest priority this term is to finish what Benjamin Netanyahu and his allies in the Bush administration began with the 2003 Iraq War. Reshaping the Middle East to secure a greater Israel, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Achieving this goal requires Russia's help. To secure that help, Trump is sidelining U.S. allies, jeopardizing vital U.S. interests, and further eroding American credibility. Trump seems to believe that history will be written by his friends, and it will reward him and his family for using American power to end the Palestinian question once and for all, forcing Arab states to accept a larger, dominant Israel. He laid this out plainly in his 2024 AIPAC speech. Trump's support for Greater Israel is well established through his ties to the largely ultranationalist groups that make up the Israel lobby in the U.S., and his past Israel-related policy decisions that were clearly against U.S. national interests. In 2017, Trump issued an order for the U.S. to become the only country to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, fulfilling a long-standing Israeli demand and a personal pledge to his major donor, Sheldon Adelson. In 2018, he moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, attracting widespread criticism around the world. That year, he fulfilled another promise to the Israel lobby and unilaterally withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, resuming the active targeting of Iran, Israel's top regional adversary. In 2019, Trump triggered widespread world condemnation for making the U.S. the only country to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, originally captured in 1967 and annexed by Israel in 1981. Most Americans are unaware that these acts were universally condemned at the time, significantly damaging U.S. international credibility. The first Trump administration removed any pretense that America is an honest broker in the Middle East, splitting the U.S. from its allies, opening the door for China, and increasing Russia's influence in the region. Trump followed this with the 2020 Abraham Accords, pushing the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan to normalize relations with Israel. These agreements were specifically designed to sideline the Palestinian issue and unite Arab states against Iran. The Palestinian terror attacks in November 2022 appear to have been a desperate attempt to disrupt a process that effectively ended the prospect of a future Palestinian state. Early in his second term, Trump proposed placing Gaza under U.S. control. At a February 4, 2025, press conference with Netanyahu, he said, "We'll own it," hinting at plans to develop Gaza, and with the implied understanding that the land will be eventually handed over to Israel. This aligns with the broader push for a greater Israel that now has Trump as its champion. Trump's close personal ties with Netanyahu are central to this strategy. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, famously lent his bed to Bibi during a family visit, and his father was one of Netanyahu's top donors and supporters. During his first term, Trump visited Jerusalem for the embassy opening in 2017. Though the two briefly fell out in 2020, when Netanyahu congratulated Biden, they reconciled in 2024 at Mar-a-Lago. Netanyahu was the first foreign leader to visit the White House after Trump's second inauguration on February 4, 2025, where they discussed Gaza and Iran, a strong sign of continued close alignment. Financially, the Israel lobby plays a major role in Trump's political success and corresponding loyalty, including his current push in the U.S. to equate criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism and make it a punishable crime to suppress dissent. Miriam Adelson, Sheldon Adelson's widow, gave $100 million to Trump's 2024 campaign via her super PAC, ironically named Preserve America. The Adelsons contributed over $218 million in 2020, and Miriam's influence was evident in major Trump decisions, like moving the U.S. Embassy. Trump's broader plan relies heavily on winning Russia's cooperation to weaken Iran, the main regional threat to Israel. While promoting non-intervention to his MAGA base, Trump's track record includes the 2020 killing of Qasem Soleimani and the imposition of sanctions on Iran, both of which were seen as damaging to American interests, but beneficial to Israel. To further his plan, Trump referred to Putin as a genius and proposed major unilateral concessions in Ukraine to secure Putin's neutrality in the event that the U.S. or Israel strike Iran. In December 2024, Trump's advisors started floating ceding parts of Ukraine to Russia, showing a clear willingness to sacrifice Ukrainian interests and upset European allies. Trump also needs Russia to push a reluctant Egypt, its client state, into accepting Gaza's population. If Egypt can be forced into accepting the 2 million or so Palestinians, it will pave the way for Gaza to become part of Trump's and Netanyahu's vision of Greater Israel. The contemplated American development of Gaza would serve a dual purpose by allowing Trump to reward his loyalists with lucrative contracts and to shift the brunt of the inevitable global condemnation onto the U.S., serving as a shield for Israel. So much for America First. Choosing Riyadh for Russia-Ukraine peace talks in March 2025 was significant because it gave Saudi Arabia a chance to boost its influence beyond the region. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman hosted lengthy negotiations on March 24, aiming for a Black Sea ceasefire. This fits with Saudi Arabia's aim to improve its reputation, become a global mediator, and to further improve its relations with Israel, given its shared concerns over Iran. The Palestinian issue is the main obstacle to MBS's aspirations, and Trump has the plan to solve it on behalf of Israel, while rewarding MBS. A December 2024 post on X showed MBS meeting Putin and Trump's envoy, signaling a grand bargain in which Saudi Arabia gains more global prestige and a role in rebuilding the region. This arrangement secures regional backing for Trump's Middle East reconfiguration, including Gaza's fate. On March 25, 2025, following talks in Riyadh, the White House announced a Black Sea shipping agreement. It claimed that Russia and Ukraine promised safe navigation and a halt to using commercial vessels for military purposes. The accord heavily favored Russia, but most importantly, Trump agreed to help restore Russia's global market access for agricultural and fertilizer exports, cut maritime insurance costs, and reopen ports and payment networks, thus effectively lifting sanctions before Russia offered any real concessions. After the American announcement, Russia even demanded that these provisions be implemented first, including reconnecting Russian banks like the Russian Agricultural Bank to SWIFT. Zelensky denounced the demands as fraudulent, warning they would delay the ceasefire. But Trump, the self-proclaimed great negotiator, promptly signaled his willingness to comply. Many see this deal as a Kremlin wish list that grants Russia economic and strategic advantages, with no obligation to stop striking Ukrainian civilian targets. While this is true, such analysis misses the point that an actual ceasefire is not Trump's real goal. It appears evident that Trump is largely dependent on Putin's backing for his greater Israel agenda. Putin knows it and understands that he holds the cards, because Trump and his backers have only a short window of opportunity to implement their greater Israel plan before awareness sets in and opposition organizes. Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, highlighted this in a March 2025 interview with Tucker Carlson. He praised Putin as very smart, repeated Kremlin talking points about sham referenda justifying Russian claims over Crimea and Donbass, and dismissed European concerns as preposterous. Witkoff also brushed aside Israel's violations of agreements he himself had negotiated, like recent airstrikes on Syrian energy facilities in Gaza, by calling them separate matters in the name of Israel's self-defense. This too underscores Trump's top priority, protecting Israel's interests and bringing his greater Israel plan into reality. Trump's stance has alienated EU allies and damaged U.S. credibility worldwide. Trump and Netanyahu view the EU as hostile to a greater Israel, and they are right. In 2024, France and Germany cut arms sales to Israel over Gaza, criticizing its displacement policies. This likely informs Trump's view of NATO as obsolete, first declared in 2017, and it's driving deeper wedges as he continues to prioritize Israel over Ukraine. To sweeten the deal for Putin, Trump temporarily froze U.S. military aid and intelligence sharing in March 2025 without getting concessions from Russia, allowing Putin an opportunity to advance his aggression. Lifting sanctions on Russia through the Black Sea deal has also undermined the U.S.-originated and led sanctions regime. It is clearly against America's geopolitical goals, and Trump's continuing surrender to Putin's demands did not stop Russia from holding joint naval drills with China and Iran in the Gulf of Oman in March 2025. A direct snub of the White House. The perceived American weaknesses during the Biden administration and the current self-destructive American policies are allowing China to flex its muscle in the Middle East, where the U.S. has until now been the dominant power broker. In 2024, Beijing arranged talks between Saudi Arabia and Iran, invested $35 billion in Saudi Arabia, and hosted Palestinian reconciliation efforts. Its growing role challenges U.S. influence. Trump's actions may accelerate this process, because even if he achieves his goal, Arab animosity resulting from his actions is likely to push them in China's corner. And who is to say that the new Greater Israel might not join them when it deems it beneficial? To summarize, the most coherent explanation for Trump's foreign policy is that it's predominantly focused not on China, as professed, but on Israel's interests. It's driven by personal ties, pro-Israel financial backing, and Trump's desire for a lasting legacy as the American creator of Greater Israel. He is employing American power to achieve this vision and eradicate the Palestinian issue once and for all. By trying to get Putin to pressure regional players towards this goal, Trump is sacrificing long-standing U.S. alliances, diminishing America's credibility, and compromising America's superpower status. Contrary to his campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," Trump appears indifferent to the severe damage his decisions and actions have done to America's foreign policy interests or the dire geopolitical consequences that might follow his reign. In a way, Trump is the modern equivalent to King Louis XV of France, whose disastrous policies ushered the French Revolution and who famously said, "After me, the flood." So, am I missing some genius side of Trump? Or is Trump really a naive real estate developer who sincerely believes that Putin will be his friend when China comes to take the crown from the United States? Or is the truth, as I suggest above? Thank you for listening and hopefully giving it some thought. This concludes this episode of the Truthful Fake podcast. Please like and subscribe if you found it informative. Share your thoughts in the comments, agree or disagree, and tell us why. We appreciate all polite feedback, and thank you for tuning in.